Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Good For Us. And today we're going to discuss the World Test Championship with the best person to discuss this with, probably Aaron, the cricket connoisseur. How you doing, man?
Very, very kind, Asjad, but I think there are many, many more people more qualified than myself to talk about this World Test Championship. But yeah, pretty good to be honest, mate. Obviously, county cricket's back. That's a massive bonus. We got Test cricket back soon as well, with the Sri Lanka versus Bangladesh series fast approaching. But yeah, it's just a shame that obviously, as an England fan, I do think our hopes are probably at an end by this point. But yeah, still going to be a fantastic end to what's been a very, very engrossing World Test Championship cycle indeed.
Let's start off at the bottom of the table, okay? Let's start off in the shirt that I think you're wearing. Are you wearing an England Test shirt? Yes, you are. So let's talk about the team that has played 13 Test matches. And they have won one, okay? They've only won one match. They're sitting at the bottom, sitting pretty, maybe, maybe not. What have you thought of England as a team? We've talked about this so much. They have drawn some really good matches, but haven't had that killer instinct, you know. And one thing I want to mention is something Ben Stokes said yesterday or the day before, that England now needs cricketers or Test cricketers who are selfless, right? And for that reason, I think England are going to make a few changes in the upcoming series next month against New Zealand. But yeah, England, World Test Championship, this particular cycle, thoughts?
Yeah, to be honest, couldn't have gone any worse, could it? When you put it into perspective, bottom of the table, it's not where English cricket fans want the team to be. Obviously, the Ashes was just the culmination of what was a very, very tough year in 2021, after such a promising start as well. That's what's such a shame, you know, the victory in Sri Lanka, and we'd won a very good series there against a tough opposition. We won in Chennai against India, and then after that second test, didn't win a single test for the rest of the year, and still haven't won one. So hopefully we can change that in the summer of 2022. But I think it's pretty obvious where England's faults have lied, and that was with the top order. Aside from Joe Root, Joe Root's just been something completely else, hasn't he? To be honest, in this cycle, 1,175 runs in the Test Championship. He's head and shoulders above everybody else in this cycle. But that is not the hallmarks, the trademarks of a good side. You should not be heavily relying on someone like Joe Root's game in, game out, series in, series out. And England's have just capitulated a lot in Test match cricket. With that being said, 2022 does offer a massive opportunity. Got a brand new captain. We will have a brand new head coach. At some point, we're still waiting to find out who that is. But that'd be quite an interesting appointment, to say the least, for the Three Lions and a Crown. And Anderson and Broad should be back, hopefully, given the discussions that Rob Key and Ben Stokes have had in those management meetings. So, yeah, hopefully things can turn around. But I think in terms of this cycle, things have been absolutely appalling for England. And I think today pretty much sums up where we're at in the Test rankings, 6th. It's a massive, massive drop-off for a side which a decade ago was at the top of the tree.
Yeah, and it's disappointing, and it's not good for Test cricket, because when England, Australia, West Indies, Pakistan, every team in the World Test Championship, barring teams like Bangladesh, and people are going to hate me for this, but if we consider a lot of the teams, the earlier test playing nations, right? When they're doing well in Test cricket, that's when Test cricket is at its best, at least in my opinion. So England at number 6, and then at the bottom of the Test Championship, it's not the greatest feeling, and I don't see them again. It'll be very difficult, but they're probably not getting to the final.
We're not.
However, if we look at the next cycle, it's a good building block now with the new captain, new coaches, new management, everything. And maybe a new look England side. Maybe they can get back to 10 years ago, right? Where England were number 1. But we'll have to see how this goes. And Joe Root, I want to resonate the same thoughts. Absolutely sensational. Okay. Not just 2021, but this entire World Test Championship cycle, he has been head and shoulders above every other batsman. There, no offense to, the likes of Babar Azam or Labuschagne or anyone else in that list, but yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, kudos to Joe Root, but unfortunately, England will need to try and improve themselves over the course of this cycle and then moving forward. If we go up to Bangladesh, who have been quite impressive, right? Who have been very impressive in this particular cycle. One notable thing I want to mention is the victory against New Zealand.
Yes.
In New Zealand, with it was just like it's what dreams are made of, right? If you're a Bangladesh fan, you don't expect it. You're like, yeah, this is just the standard team we usually send everywhere, right? Let's just see what happens. We don't win that much abroad anyway, so let's just give it a go. And the way they played that match, it definitely showed how determined the Bangladesh side was. And we discussed it in detail in our review a few months back, but that type of Bangladesh side are dangerous against any side. And that was the brilliance that was, Ibadat Hussain bowling brilliant. Taskin Ahmed is someone I always talk about. The way he's bowling, the pace, the swing he's getting now is something I haven't seen from a Bangladesh bowler since maybe Mashfur Murtaza, right? And even since then, I haven't seen anyone be as impressive in Test cricket. Mustafizur Rahman, another one that just popped into my head as well. But Taskin Ahmed, with the pace he's bowling, absolutely brilliant. And then the likes of Mushfiqur Rahim, Shakib al-Hasan, the batsmen that have held Bangladesh to a brilliant order whenever they come out to bat. You've got Mahmudullah Riaz. You've got someone very young, but still showing how skilled he is in Mehdi Hassan Miraz, right? Not just with the ball, but also with the bat. You've got Momin ul-Haq, who I think he scored like 80 odd in this particular match that we're referencing, right? So Bangladesh have been impressive in this cycle. However, they've only won one game. So what are your thoughts on Bangladesh?
Well, they're a very, very interesting team to analyse, and I think it is important because you mentioned about the legacy sides in Test cricket. So your England, your South Africas, Australia, India, West Indies, etc., etc. Obviously, they're much more established. Bangladesh only became a full member in 2000, so they've only been playing Test cricket for 22 years, and yet they've beaten England in a Test series, they've beaten Australia, they've beaten New Zealand away from home, which was absolutely staggering, something which England haven't done for a number of years. So I think Bangladesh, you do have to take their performances with a slight pinch of salt. I mean, they're still very much in the infancy of their Test cricket journey, and yet they're massively punching above their weight. So as a fan of Bangladeshi cricket, obviously I want to see them improve, but again, it's going to be a gradual process. They also don't have the financial capabilities than England and Australia and India or Pakistan have. So I think that's also important to take into consideration. But something which has really impressed me when it comes to this Bangladesh side is the willingness to give young talent a chance. Yeah. Mehdi Hassan is a fantastic example of this. He's going to be a huge loss for the upcoming Sri Lanka series. Unfortunately, he's been ruled out with an injury. But someone else, we couldn't have a chat about Bangladesh without mentioning my boy, Mahmudul Hassan Joy, who of course scored a century in that series, was outstanding for Chittagong division in the domestic stuff. Made that step up to Test cricket and has really quite applied himself very well so far. So that's what I've been impressed with Bangladesh. They don't have the same level of superstars as the more established nations just yet, but they've got a lot of character. They've got a lot of fight, they've got a lot of spirit, a lot of determination. And on their day, as they showed in that fateful test in New Zealand, they are a tough team to beat. So just watch out for the Tigers in upcoming years. There is some very good young talent in the country as well, with the likes of Nazmul Hossain Shanto, for example, coming through, just to name one. Parviz Hussain as well is another one, more so in the 50 over for the time being. But again, I'd like to see him make the step up to first-class cricket eventually. But yeah, exciting times for Bangladesh, to say the least. And obviously, they're above England at the moment, so they've clearly been doing something right in this particular cycle.
Yeah, and that's the surprise. And I completely agree with you with regards to, comparing legacy sides with new test nations. You got Bangladesh, you got Ireland, you got Afghanistan as well. So it's hard to compare the two as equals, because Bangladesh only playing Test cricket for 22 years, while England's been playing Test cricket over 100 years, right?
Yeah, since 1877, and we're still sixth in the world rankings.
It's okay. World rankings mean nothing. It's only the World Test Championship where
we're bottom. Great, yeah. Fantastic right? Solace for England fans.
Let's be slightly optimistic. Let's talk about West Indies, because West Indies have been fairly well. I think please correct me if I'm wrong, but West Indies beat Pakistan as well, didn't they? When Pakistan toured West Indies earlier last year. One person I just want to, actually two players I want to highlight. Jayden Seals, the way he's been bowling, he's been a revelation. Someone to partner up with Kemar Roach. When Shannon Gabriel gets injured, not got injured, but gets injured almost every few series, they're unable to get that second pace bowler who's able to propel West Indies to a really good position. But Jayden Seals definitely got those reins, and he's leading the pack in terms of wickets, I believe, for West Indies in this World Test Championship. So he's been really impressive. And then the captain himself, who just seems to be piling on runs over and over again. I think he's scored over 600 runs in this cycle. Very, very impressive. Opens the batting, sometimes gives himself the ball as well, makes ludicrous decisions like Kyle Mayer's bowling, and Kyle Mayer's absolutely obliterates the opposition. I'm really sorry, Aaron. I really don't mean to belittle England in this video. It's just, it's happening organically. So yeah, West Indies, thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Also, just to go back to what we were mentioning there about the Pakistan series, I think that was 1-1, if I'm not mistaken. I think Pakistan won in Sabina Park, yeah. But in terms of the West Indies, again, they're such a difficult team to analyse because on their day, as we saw in the England series, they're very, very tough to break down. Yeah. But the key thing for me, and this has been the problem with West Indies for a number of years now, it has been the balance of that top six. I'm not sure they've still got it. And one massive area of weakness is the opening partner for Craig Brathwaite. Yeah. There aren't many options in the Caribbean at the moment. They've tried the likes of John Campbell time and time again. Shane Mosley from Barbados, we saw him in the Bangladesh series. But other than those two, maybe you got Jeremy Solizano. He's a potential option which they could utilise in the future. But I just feel like that top order, in comparison to other nations, isn't quite as strong. And I do think that's a massive Achilles heel for the West Indies, heading not just into the rest of this cycle, but indeed the next one as well. They need to find a stable opening partner for Craig Brathwaite, who, as you said, has been fantastic, has scored 602 runs in this cycle. But with that being said, again, there are definite reasons to be a little bit hopeful from a West Indies perspective. Kyle Mayers, to name but one example, was excellent in that game against England, completely destroyed us. But he also had that double century in the Bangladesh series. You've got Joshua Da Silva, who's really coming to prominence with both the gloves and with the bat in hand, the young Trinidadian. And then you've got Jayden Seals, who's absolutely fantastic. He's a great prospect. I remember watching him in the 2020 Under-19 World Cup in South Africa. And there are just certain players where you look at them and you think they've got star quality. They're not just going to do well in this game. They can exceed with the right nurturing, the right growth, the right development. He's one of those players. I do think there's a bit of a misconception about his pace. I do think sometimes we do look at him as a little bit quicker than he is. But what he is at this age is very, very disciplined. He's got great control. He can swing the ball both ways. And he's very, very accurate. He's very disciplined, almost militaristic with his line and lengths. And it's serving him very, very well in the test format. So for the West Indies, I do think it's going to be a while before we see them, really challenging for those top spots. A lot's going to have to go right. But from what I'm seeing at the moment, in certain areas, the bowling being one of them, and of course Joshua Da Silva being another one, there is also a slight reason to be optimistic, and I just think something else which could be interesting in the future. Obviously, this guy's just been named as the new T20 and ODI captain.
Yes.
But Nicholas Pooran, there's a lot of talk in the region, an awful lot of talk, as there usually is when it comes to that West Indies top six. Could he make his test debut at some point? We'll have to wait and see. Will it be this cycle? Who knows? But yeah, I would be looking at that as a potential option for the men in maroon at some point later. Just something to ponder for West Indies fans out there.
100%. And I think that would be that. I think I remember speaking to Nick Hill ages ago and Michelle from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and they're like, why not give Nicholas Pooran a go in Test cricket? He's definitely, if not a fantastically talented batsman, even if he doesn't have the temperament, but we've seen it in ODI cricket now. We've seen it in T20s. We've seen it in multiple formats that he does have that temperament to be able to bat long and then go absolutely ballistic if he wants to be against the red ball or the white ball. So yeah, very good shout that. And yeah, West Indies very impressive, but unfortunately they're still sitting quite low in that table as well. We go up to New Zealand. And New Zealand have been surprisingly underperforming in this cycle for World Test Championships from last year, from the last cycle. Maybe it's the number of games they've played, or the side they've actually put out. They haven't had the likes of Kane Williamson for more than half of their Test matches. I think Colin de Grandhomme only played a game. Trent Boult wasn't available. Matt Henry played quite a few games, I believe, and showed why he should genuinely be in the side. But I think New Zealand's just gone with, we already won it last year. Let's give another team a chance. But they've looked okay. They just haven't been the New Zealand they were in the previous cycle. What are your thoughts on New Zealand?
Yeah, again, it's an interesting time for New Zealand cricket, isn't it, really? Because they have been dominant in Test cricket for the past few years. And obviously, a massive loss is Ross Taylor.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still sad about his retirement because when you looked at those New Zealand Test 11s, aside from Kane Williamson and Trent Boult and Tim Southee, Ross Taylor was just a constant figure in that starting 11. So obviously good to see him retire. It's a shame that they no longer have him at their disposal. But it has been a bit disjointed, hasn't it, for New Zealand when you think about the starting 11s compared to that last cycle where they went on to win the trophy. They had a lot more stable 11.
Yeah.
Whereas now they're trying a lot of different things, and at times, to be fair, it's worked. We saw that with Matt Henry in the South Africa series. Ajaz Patel took that 10 from Mumbai, didn't he, against India. So they have performed at times, but I do think that the injuries, the retirement of Ross Taylor, other things which have been out of their control have affected their campaign. It's been a bit stop-start in comparison to that of Australia or South Africa or India's, to name but a few examples. So an uncharacteristically kind of, almost middling performance from New Zealand. They haven't been as dominant as we expected. Of course, that Bangladesh series was a bit of a wake-up call as well. But then again, you can never, ever disregard the Black Caps, especially with Williamson, with Latham, with Nicholls, Tom Blundell as well. I know we haven't quite seen the best of him in Test cricket just yet, but trust me, if they give him time and they continue to play him, he's a serious cricketer from the Wellington Firebirds. And then, of course, his teammates in Wellington, a certain Devon Conway, also someone to definitely watch out for in these next few years. So they've got the chess pieces. It's all about just, finding that correct starting 11 and having them all being fully fit and available at the same time. So I do think this has been slightly underwhelming, I've got to be honest, because they were the champions. But at the same time, heading into the next cycle, they're going to be back in the mix. You can never, ever discount the Kiwis.
I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. And that's the reason why, they've been so dominant for the past 4 or 5 years easily in Test cricket and other formats as well. So, hopefully they can bounce back for the next cycle. Let's move on to the top 5, right? Let's talk about Sri Lanka, a team which unfortunately hasn't played as many Test matches as a lot of the other sides. I believe they've only played four matches or something, and they've won 2 of them. So they have shown some sort of ability to be able to win, but also the fact that, they are able to get absolutely hammered if required against sides which are categorically better than them in Test cricket. Now, I want to talk about their captain, because a lot of the time you meant like the 2 captain openers, the 3 captain openers right now. You've got Dean Elgar, you've got Craig Brathwaite, and you've got Karunaratne. Now, one thing I want to talk about with Karunaratne is he is absolutely brilliant. He is that solid factor at the top of the order that allows Sri Lanka to do whatever they want afterwards. And he's providing them stable ship. And then we got Pathum Nissanka, someone who is young, talented. Also, we did a video on Pathum Nissanka. I'll leave the link up here in the description and stuff. But genuinely, hugely talented player, great temperament, and is able to score big and able to adapt to conditions quite well, at least so far, not just in Test cricket, but in different formats that he's played in for Sri Lanka. And then I have to mention someone you're a huge fan of, right? Lasith Embuldeniya. Lasith Embuldeniya. He just loves to pick up wickets. Even if he goes for runs, at the end of the day, it's like, he has 5 wickets in a match. He just always has the ability to pick up wickets. You've got Ramesh Mendes as well.
Ramesh Mendes, yeah. And Praveen Jaiwit Rama as well. I mean, these are 3 people that I would be looking at for the future, to be honest. I've said this before because Sri Lanka, a bit like England, find themselves with a brand new head coach. Funnily enough, England's old one, Chris Silverwood. But in terms of the future for Sri Lanka, I want them to build their team around those 3 spin bowlers.
Yeah.
Mendis, Embaldenia, and Jaiwit Rama. 3 incredibly talented spin bowlers, to say the least. I mean, Sri Lanka never have an issue when it comes to producing these outstanding test spinners. We saw with Murali, Harath, Duran Pereira as well. I could name loads, to be honest. But I think those 3, that's where the core nucleus of this side should be based for the next few years. You can turn Gaul into a literal fortress with those 3 playing, and I cannot wait to see them in action in this upcoming series against Bangladesh, a side which, by the way, Sri Lanka have quite the good record against. I'm not sure whether or not we'll touch upon that later, but I do fancy Sri Lanka to do quite well in this series. But the real issue for me when it comes to the Lions is the almost chaotic, enigmatic nature of that batting lineup. A bit like the West Indies, but almost to an extreme. Because when Sri Lanka are playing well, they're absolutely fantastic to watch. Obviously, you've got Dimuth Karunaratne at the top of the order, a man who I like to call Amazon Prime, because he always delivers. So you know he's always going to get runs at the top of the order, but it's about that middle order, who score runs quickly, they score runs quite fluently and elegantly, but at the same time, they're very, very prone to batting collapses, as we saw in the England series in 2021. If they can sort that out, and that is a massive if, but if they can sort that out, I do think Sri Lanka are quite an under-the-radar side in Test cricket, because they have got some good young options. Patim Nisanka, I've got loads of time for. I really do. Just personifies the word class. I cannot wait to see how his career develops over the next few years. And then, of course, those spin bowlers. It's an exciting time for Sri Lankan cricket. But then again, I just worry about that batting. If the batting can fire in that next cycle, who knows? They could well be in the top 5, top 4, heading into 2023.
Yeah. Patim Nisanka, I keep talking about him. He's one of those young guys nowadays that everyone just keeps mentioning, and I'm looking forward to Sri Lanka. You know, not just they still have a chance to potentially make the top 3 again. It doesn't matter if you make the top 3; it's a top 2 that matters within the cycle. But even if they get up there, it is genuinely going to show how good their side has been. And Bangladesh, I completely agree with you. The record against Bangladesh has been pretty good, and we will touch upon that later on at the end. Let's talk about the team I really want to talk about, which is the number 4 team. But anyways, yeah, it's Pakistan I'm going to talk about. We're talking about Pakistan. And as you could tell, I'm always so negative about Pakistan and the way they played. However, this cycle's been pretty good for them.
Oh, it has.
This was probably going to be their best chance to make the final. And still, there is still hope. There is still hope. A lot more than a lot of the other sides. So I'm glad about that. But some players that have performed exceptionally well are Babar Azam, Shaheen Afridi, but some people who I did not expect to be scoring runs for Pakistan on a regular basis are the 2 openers, the new 2 openers, actually including Abid Ali as well. But let's put him to the side. He's also he's probably going to come back in the next few months, so that'll be great news for Pakistan. But Imam ul Haq and Abdullah Shafiq, what Abdullah Shafiq's done since his debut in Test cricket is outstanding. He's been scoring 50s, he's been scoring centuries, be it against Australia, be it in Bangladesh against Bangladesh. He's looked very, very good, very solid. Someone who we as Pakistan fans have needed at the top of the order. So that's great. And then you got Imam ul Haq coming back into the side against Australia and on absolutely beautiful pitches, taking the most out of those pitches and batting time. Not just batting runs, but batting time like crazy. And then we have to talk about Babar Azam because
we do.
Yeah, he is. I believe he's in the top 3 run getters this season. In this cycle. Yep.
682 runs for King Babar. Quite outstanding, to say the least.
Outstanding, man. And that's the best part. He's been able to mold himself into not just being a white ball player, but also a red ball player, especially through this cycle. And the confidence he's probably gotten with the fact that he is now captain, his camaraderie with Mohammad Rizwan as well. That's been great to watch Rizwan as well, by the way. Not just with the gloves, but with the bat as well. Azhar Ali finally performing. So that's great news for Pakistan, like all around with the bat, at least. And then with the ball, Babar Azam picking up a couple of wickets with his gentle off spin, which is really nice. But Shaheen Shah Afridi, absolutely outstanding, amazing. You're going to come up with better words, so I'll let you talk about Shaheen Shah Afridi. But genuinely, very, very impressed with the way he's bowled, not just in this cycle, be it the county championship, be it the previous cycle. He was the second highest wicket taker in Test cricket last year. His partner in crime last year was Hassan Ali, who unfortunately has not been in the best of nick in Test cricket. But dude's been doing great things in county cricket, right?
He has,
so
yeah.
hopefully that will bring him back into that sort of mojo to be able to pick up wickets on a regular basis. But yeah, Pakistan overall has had a very good time of it. Thoughts on Pakistan in this cycle?
Yeah, to be honest, Asjad, they've been very, very impressive. And obviously we've spoken about Babar Azam. I could wax lyrical about his batting for days on end. You know, he's one of the greatest players on the entire planet to watch. The words aesthetically pleasing,
Oof.
I don't think do Babar Azam justice. He is one of those players where you're at the ground, all eyes are on him. It's as simple as that. You want to watch every single ball, every single delivery that he faces is a moment. It's an occasion that he savours, and he makes batting look so easy. He really does. So again, we all know the class. We all know the majesty of Babar Azam. 682 runs, averaging over 60. In this cycle, he's been quite impeccable. But Shaheen Shah Afridi, you wanted some adjectives? I'm going to use one right here then, Asjad. Resplendent. That is how I'd describe his performances so far. Again, very eye-catching. He's made Test matches just come alive at times with these fiery, fast, exciting spells of his left-arm fast bowling. He's just absolute box office. That's how I've described Shaheen Shah Afridi. And tomorrow, funnily enough, slightly off topic, but we are actually going to see Rizwan versus Afridi.
Yes,
Sussex
we are.
taking on Middlesex. That's going to be absolutely fantastic. Cheteshwar Pujara also playing in that game for the Martlets. So for Pakistan, I must say, I've been very, very impressed. And something which I was looking out for in terms of their performances was a little bit more of an even keel. So I alluded to beforehand with Sri Lanka, the enigmatic nature of their performances. One game they're fantastic, the next one they're not. I feel like Pakistan used to have that problem, and they still do at times in limited overs cricket. But I feel like in the Test arena, I feel like that gap's closing. And that's a really good thing for Pakistan because it means they're becoming more consistent and more stable, more reliable as a side. So whether or not we're going to see them in the final remains to be seen. You do, of course, have some home series against England, New Zealand, to name but a couple. But either way, I think this is a massive step forward for the men in green. And fingers crossed for Pakistan fans, they can use this as a springboard to generate some more positive momentum in the next cycle, because who knows what might happen. You know, with the continued emergence and progression of Babar, Imam ul-Haq, Abdullah Shafiq, by the way, those two, and Abid Ali, in fairness, in home conditions, he's outstanding. I think the openers deserve a lot of credit for Pakistan. And then that bowling attack, it's always going to be absolutely dynamite, isn't it? So, yeah, positive steps for Pakistan. Positive steps indeed. And as I said, can't wait to see how they do in next year's iteration of the tournament.
I would be so happy if we could get a Pakistan-India final in the World Test Championship. Seems unlikely, but if we get that, I'm going to lose my mind. Like I said before, probably their best chance. And hopefully, these building blocks that are in place right now can transition Pakistan into an even more consistent team rather than, some days up, some days down. As Nasser Hussain says, Pakistan is up 1 second, down the other second. And hopefully, Pakistan can be a type of team like the team I'm going to talk about next, which is India, which have been consistently doing well in Test cricket for quite some time. They were World Test Championship finalists. They came runners-up in the final last year. They haven't had the best cycle, though, but some players have impressed. And I just want to address two players. One is one of my favorite players playing right now, which is Jasprit Bumrah, who's just decided, I didn't do very well over the last couple of years. I'm coming back from injury. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. He's just rushed through the wickets. I think he's got like 40 odd wickets or something like that.
He has. Do you want to know his average as well?
Yeah, go on.
18.65.
Exactly. That is an average of a freaking fast bowler bowling 85, 90 miles an hour. That is brilliant. Absolutely sensational. And then there's a batsman. Well, actually, two batsmen. They bat at around between 5 and 7, right? Depending on the situation. One is Rishabh Pant, and we all know about Rishabh Pant and his elegance and his innovative ways, let's put it that way, of batting against pace, be it spin, be it whatever. striking out 72 in this leg. But Shreyas Iyer, man. Shreyas Iyer. Like, I did not know. Well, I did kind of know, but I didn't watch him play red ball that much. But the way he's been playing red ball cricket is out of this world. The cleanliness of the way he smashes the ball, even if it goes straight to the fielder, it looks, as you mentioned, aesthetically pleasing, yes, but also it's hard as hell. It goes far when he smashes the ball, man. Genuinely. What was it? In a match, he scored like 70 odd, and like he's striking the ball so quickly. In a test match, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Even though he's got solid defense, he's able to switch on that gear very quickly. Unlike Rishabh Pant, who kind of plays a more extravagant role in his defensive approaches. Shreyas Iyer is solid as anything when he's defending, and he can just punt you over the infield, smash you for six, as is number 3 at the moment. So some of the players that I mentioned, really impressed with those. Unfortunately, still no solace for Virat Kohli, which is quite upsetting from an Indian fan. And on top of that, we've been seeing a transition out of Rahane and Pujara and getting in players like KL Rahul again. You've got Shreyas Iyer, as I mentioned, Hanuma Vihari as well. I think he's the second highest run getter for India in this cycle as well. So some impressive signs for the future of India. And in terms of the pace, I already mentioned Bumrah, but Siraj, Shami, Sharma, whoever they bring in, they're just doing great things. But yeah, thoughts on India in this particular cycle?
Yeah, again, very impressed, to be honest, with India in this particular cycle. Obviously, the big worry was the whole transition, wasn't it, away from Pujara and Rahane. But Shreyas Iyer in particular, I just want to mention him because we mentioned already how classy, how fluent he is. He's the next in line, isn't he?
Yes.
Let's be honest. I mean, the guy is now the face of the Kolkata Knight Riders. He's been fantastic in Test cricket as well. I think back to the New Zealand series, just announced himself in no better style, to be completely honest. And then, as you mentioned, you've got KL Rahul, you've got Vihari in there as well. You've got someone like Abhimanyu Ezrin, who's still on the sidelines as well. Pink Panchal is another one. I don't worry, to be honest, about the future of Indian cricket. And a massive thing which India have done so well in the past few years is develop a bona fide seam battery. Because you look at good teams, good India sides of the past, and they'd always have a top quality spin bowler, wouldn't they? With the likes of a Kumble or a Harbhajan Singh, to name but a couple, or Bishan Singh Bedi, all the way back in the 70s and 80s. Beautiful bowling action, by the way, did Bishan. But they'd always have great spin bowlers, but the seam attack wouldn't be as strong.
Yeah.
Whereas now, India can travel anywhere in the world and put up as good a fights as any seam attack. With the likes of Bumrah, 40 wickets, an average of 18.65 is ludicrous. You've got Siraj, you've got Shami, Ishant Sharma as well is another one at their disposal. It's quite staggering, to be honest, just how dominant India have been at times and can be in Test cricket. Obviously finalists in the last edition. And it will be interesting to see if they can make this one as well. Obviously the big series is India-Australia, isn't it? The 4-match Test series. That's going to be absolutely massive. That could well decide who makes the final, and probably will do. But even if India, just stay in the top 3, considering that they have lost a Rahane, they have lost a Pujara, 2 stalwarts, 2 bastions of that top to middle order, the signs just look really good, don't they? Let's be honest. And if they keep this up, well, you've got to think they'll be up there for many a year to come. They're an incredibly strong outfit indeed.
It's hard to imagine India without Rahane and Pujara over the last 10 years, but the way these players are integrating in the side, you mentioned Shreyas Iyer, Hanuma Vihari, we said, KL Rahul, potentially Shubman Gill, Mayank Agarwal, right? You could start naming names and you'll get loads. So yeah, great. Also, potentially Hardik Pandya coming back to the Test side because he's doing great in the IPL. So that's the reason why I just thought of him. But yeah, definitely India to watch out for in this cycle, in this edition. Next teams are the top 2. I'm going to combine the discussion with the top 2 because who would have thunk? Like, I did not think South Africa was going to be up here. But the way South Africa has bounced back under Temba Bavuma, man, and under Dean Elgar, under Aiden Markham, the way the batsmen have shown up, it's just outstanding. And then one guy who came back with a bang, Simon Harmer, right? he was just like a revelation, because I remember him from like years ago, but I haven't seen him play for a while. I know he was playing county cricket, wasn't he? And his first class record is
Do you want to know a
staggeringly.
great stat about Simon Harmer?
Go for it.
Joined Essex in 2017. Right, we're now in 2022, so he's been playing county cricket ever since. He's gone wicketless in the fourth innings on just 3 occasions in his entire county career. It's absolutely ludicrous. 2 of those against Warwickshire, funnily enough. That's why I remember the stat, but an absolute master, a magician, the leading wicket taker in the tournament in 2019 in the county championship. And a great thing as well, after that Bangladesh match, he came back to play for Essex and he took 3 wickets in his first 4.4 overs. So again, I mentioned there actually about India and that their previous weakness had been their seam battery. It's the opposite for South Africa.
Yeah.
They've had some really good spinners over the years. I mean, the great Hugh Tayfield comes to mind straight away. Nicky Boyer as well, another one who we can mention. But they've never had 2 in tandem.
Yes.
Whereas now you've got Keshav Maharaj, who I still think is the number 1 option for the Proteas with his left arm off spin. But you've also got Simon Harmer to complement one of the best seam attacks on the planet. And, you know, we talk about the next generation. Marco Jansen, what a fantastic prospect he is. Can bat a bit as well, as we've seen in the 4-day stuff in South Africa. It's been quite the journey for this Proteas team. There's been a lot of off-field stuff as well. Let's not forget that. But how they've come together as a unit, and the one series which will always stand out to me is the India series.
Yeah.
Because they easily could have capitulated. South Africa in the past could have looked at that first game and gone, you know what, they're better than us. We're going to give it, you know, a decent fight, but we're probably not going to win. And instead, they had that team talk out in the middle. Dean Elgar, who has always been a fantastic born leader and is a great player at the top, one of the most consistent openers in world cricket. But they had that team talk, they got together, they gelled as a unit, and came back in that series quite magnificently. I don't want to curse it, but you've got to be honest. South Africa have got a chance of making the final here.
Yeah.
They're playing an England side who have got a brand new captain, still don't even have a coach, and have got certain gaps in that 11 which can be massively exploited, in particular the top and certain parts of the middle order. If they reach it, it will be one of the real feel-good stories in world cricket, in particular Test cricket in the last few years. So I'm not going to put the jinx on them. I'm not going to say anything absolute, but I just wish the Proteas all the best of luck, aside from that England series, heading into the rest of this edition. They've been absolutely superb.
And considering the fact that, you know, at the start, not at the start of this cycle, but at the end of the previous cycle, they lost Quinton de Kock, or around the time they lost Quinton de Kock as their wicket keeper. And he was like, I'm retiring from Test cricket. Carl Verreynne coming in, and people were like, oh, who is this guy? What's he doing? His first class average was like 50, right?
Yep, there's also another one, Asjad. There is also another one to watch out for. Also a keeper by the name of Ryan Rickleton.
Oh, yes.
Watch out for him. Plays his cricket at Johannesburg, first class average of over 53. And again, they've got players coming up through the ranks. Keegan Peterson, who was immensely impressive, batting at 3 in that India series. So South Africa, it's come out of nowhere. But with Dean as the captain, with that strong seam attack supplemented by Maharaj, and a batting lineup which, to be honest, I think has exceeded expectations so far.
100%.
They're definitely worthy of being in that top 2 for the time being.
Yeah, for sure. And the funny thing is, they've won 70% of their games. Both of these sides, South Africa and the team I'm going to talk about, Australia, both won 70% of their games plus. And it's like they've played they haven't played like 2 games or 3 games, 4 games. They played quite a few games. So it's great to see the way they're gelling with each other. And South Africa definitely I'm going to call it now. I think South Africa's going to go through. It'll be India or Australia as the second team, but South Africa's going to go through. It's almost written in stone. Even though I want Pakistan, India, I think South Africa is probably going to go through with the way they've been playing. And last but not least, the team at the top of the table with wins against sides, draws against Pakistan, and doing some great things. And unsurprisingly, the best of the lot is Usman Khwaja, someone who came back after being away from the side for a few years and just took the Australian batting lineup as, oh, I wasn't here and maybe this guy wasn't performing. Let me just do the job of like 3 players, scoring 750 runs in, what is it, like 5 matches, averaging 125, over the course of 9 innings. Sensational. Absolutely. And surprisingly, this is where, like, and this is the actual surprise, Smith and Labuschagne, yes, they've scored runs and stuff, but they haven't been the best batsmen for Australia. And they're considered as the best batsman for Australia. David Warner considered one of the best batsmen for Australia. But it's been Khwaja and Head who've been scoring a lot of the runs as well. And Cameron Green, Alex Carey, right? So Australia genuinely been building that lineup to say, yeah, we're going to tackle every possible situation. Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc coming in at 8 and 9 and able to score runs. Okay. And I mentioned those names. Talk about their bowling. Josh Hazlewood, Nathan Lyon. They could bring in whoever they want. That guy will still pick up wickets, right? It was unfortunate that Scott Boland didn't play in Pakistan, but he was just like, why? Like, how is Australia so good? We've talked about South Africa. We talked about India, right? And their pace battery and their batting and how well they are put together. Australia right now feels, probably isn't, but feels like the Australia of the early 2000s. The way they're able to perform and get wins out of nowhere, it's just outstanding. And absolutely loving the fact that Australia is kind of on top again. And I'm speaking to an Englishman right here. So what are your thoughts on Australia, Arid?
Well, obviously, you know, when I come on and talk cricket, very, very unbiased. So I've got to give Australia a tremendous amount of credit, obviously. They have been superb. They are definitely worthy finalists. I think they're going to reach it, to be honest. I think they are the nailed-on team. I do think that series is going to be massive, though, in India. Yeah. But even if they get a couple of draws out there, they're pretty much nailed on. So Australia, you look at the balance of that starting 11, and it's just superb. And I mention this all the time about batsmen win your games, bowlers win your series. Yeah. And Australia have got, in my opinion, probably the best bowling attack on the planet right now, with the likes of Mitchell Starc, the captain Pat Cummins, Josh Hazlewood. Those 3 as a trio simply is unfair at times. And even then, let's say that one of those or 2 of those are out injured, or they're missing because, you know, they're rested for the series. You've got Scott Boland to come in, as we saw tour through England in that Boxing Day test at the MCG. You've got Michael Neser, who can come into the mix as well. They've got some really good backup options there. You've got Cam Green, who's beginning to really mature and make that spot his own as the all-rounder. And even in the spin department, you know, we've seen this with Mitch Swepson. He's a good backup for Nathan Lyon. You've got Ashton Agar. You've got Adam Zampa, who can potentially be a backup spin bowler as well. Australia they just have the makings of an excellent side. And again, it's so strange, isn't it? Because in a side which has been dominant at times, I would agree about the batting. Because other than Khawaja, there hasn't really been someone who's massively stood out in the way in which we would have thought they would. You know, like a Warner, a Labuschagne, a Smith, Travis Head as well. Very underrated in that middle order. But then again, as a unit, they just gel together quite superbly. And I think Pat Cummins deserves an immense amount of credit for that. Because I mentioned it before the Ashes. That was my one worry. In terms of his work, his balance, in terms of the work balance between, you know, being the captain and the premier strike bowler, basically, of that seam attack, I was a little bit concerned with how he'd deal to it and how he'd adapt to the role. And he's been absolutely marvellous. So, full credit to Australia, full credit to Pat Cummins. And yeah, I do think it's going to be a case of Australia versus one of those other top 4.
Wow.
Yeah, come the World Test Championship final, I do think they're going to make it.
I like how I said South Africa, you said Australia. So let's see what happens.
That'd be an interesting final, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Australia, South Africa at Lords. I'd bank on South Africa, by the way, just saying. At Lords, I'd bank on South Africa. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. For everyone watching, please do like, share, and subscribe. Do check out the Cricket Connoisseur on every single podcast, every single platform, every single thing in the world. Just type the Cricket Connoisseur on Google, on YouTube, on Spotify, whatever you want, you'll find him. Absolutely brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant knowledge. And